I went down and I look at Joe Biden. And Jim, it's currently 56 unfavorable, 40 favorable.
The American people aren't forgiving Joe Biden. And by the way, it's not because of personal stuff. It's because they know what a disaster he was as president. When we used to do the focus groups during the campaigns, and I tell people when I was moderating the focus groups that, the inflation rate was at 25%. The voters would sit there and they'd get visibly angry and tell you inflation was way higher than that. When you told them grocery prices were up 30%, they'd say, no, they're up about 50%. And they're still feeling the effects of Joe Biden's failures. So that's why his negatives are driven, and they're so bad because they are issue related. And they're still there because the American people are feeling the effects. And I actually look at it, and you brought it up at the beginning of the segment, is the whole idea about how much better the American people are feeling about the direction of the country under Donald Trump.
All right, guys, good Friday to you. I hope you had a good week. It was a little short for those of us that had a down day on Monday, but that makes it good anyway. And we've got an amazing show coming your way. Both John and Jim are together. The McLaughlin brothers, the president's pollster, they've known him, polled for him well before he got into politics. These folks know what he likes, how he reacts. We're going to have an amazing conversation. I'm so excited for this. Here's the best part. We get double polling. They just did two big things. They did a national poll in May of Trump, the Trump agenda, how it's all playing, right? And then they also did a second poll in the battleground congressional district. So we're going to break it all down. This is going to be amazing. And as I said earlier this week, we've got a great week lined up next week. Victor Davis Hanson, Secretary of Education, Lyndon McMahon coming up. This is going to be amazing. And Ed Martin from the Department of Justice, he'll join us next week as well. This is going to be an all-star couple of weeks for the Sean Spicer Show. So hit that record and notification and share do me a favor, take the link, set it to 5 friends and say, hey, join us live at 6 o'clock every night in the chat. You know who you are, Hart and everyone else who I have so much fun with you guys in the chat on YouTube. So either do that or you can share it on audio. I don't really care, but I love the community. Thanks for being with us all the time. Before we get into it with the McLaughlin brothers to talk about the latest polling, I guys know that tax day may have passed. It was in April, but for millions of Americans, they still live with the threat of the IRS, whether that's because they have unfiled, unpaid taxes. You know what I'm talking about. You may be one of those people yourselves. The IRS sends out 5,000 new tax liens every single day, every day. And you think about that, what that means: wage garnishment, property seizures, bank levies. These guys have so many tools at their disposal, like the DOJ of taxes. They come after you. It's like the full weight of the federal government. You know what I'm talking about. The coolest part is that there is still time. If you are sitting here going, I have unfiled taxes, I have unpaid taxes, just know that there are people that can help you. I think the best people in the business are the folks at Tax Network USA. These guys have been around for a ton. They have recovered over $1 billion for their clients. They have a direct preferred line into the IRS. That means they know exactly who to call, who they can deal with, who to stay away from to resolve your problem. So if you've been getting letters or phone calls, just do me a favor, call the folks at Tax Network USA. It is not too late. The deadline has passed, but the help it still remains. So give them a call, 1-800-958-1000, or go to tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. All one word, no spaces, tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. Regardless of the April 15th tax deadline, they can still help you and give you some options. Reach out, Tax Network USA, tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. All right, before we get into it with the McLaughlin brothers, two great guys, let me tell you about another great guy, Leo Grillo. You know, if you've been watching the show for a while, Leo is a good friend of mine. He's been with us from the beginning. He has a great story. He rescued a Doberman that was along the road, malnutrition. He named the dog Delta. It stands for dedication and everlasting love to animals. And that became what is now Delta Rescue. DeltaRescue.org has all the videos so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But that one dog became a life's mission for Leo. It takes in abused, neglected, malnutrition, dogs, cats, animals, all sorts of animals. It's amazing what they do. And if you go to deltarescue.org, you'll see what I'm talking about because the videos are so compelling. This has become a life's work for him. But there's no big government grants, no USAID, no Politico Pro subscriptions. Leo does this because he loves it and he relies on the help of people like me and you. I'm an animal lover. I've rescued 3 dogs. And I made a personal donation at deltarescue.org, and I'd like you to consider one too, because I want this work to continue. But even more so, if you go to deltarescue.org, you see that estate planning tab, hit it, download it, think about it, pray on it. If you have an old 401k and old taxes, because we want to make this an enduring mission. All right, deltarescue.org. Take a look for me, especially over this weekend. Without further ado, I want to bring in both McLaughlin brothers, Jim and John, to break down the latest polling. For the first time ever, I'm pleased to have both McLaughlin brothers. Guys, I teased this. I said this was like Janet and Michael. They never appeared together. I don't know. I feel honored that you're both together. I think we've got too much Irish in one show. But thank you both for making time. I really appreciate it.
The pleasure's all ours, Sean.
All right, I want to start. You guys have a brand new national survey out. There's a few things that jumped out at me right off the bat. I looked at what I think a lot of you guys look at as pollsters. What's the right track, wrong track of the country going? John, I'll start with you. Like, to me, if someone brand new to politics look at this and they might say, wow, it doesn't look that good. But I think you have to look at this in context, because that's where it really matters, from where it was when Donald Trump was elected to where it is now.
Right. And what you're looking at is, there's a trend line with that. It's on our website at McLaughlinOnline.com. And the trend line, when Obama was president, it was 2/3 wrong track, and somehow he got reelected. And then when President Trump ran in 2016, you knew in that campaign, 2/3 of the voters thought the country was on the wrong track, and that's how we won. And last November, we had 63% said wrong track on election day, and it got even higher in December, 66. But now you see the president has the right direction up to 42%, and the wrong track's only at 48. It's a precipitous drop. And other pollsters are, they, for whatever reasons, at the right time, they're getting a net positive right direction by a point or two. That's a big turn. That's a big change, because it has to do with a lot of factors, whether it's the economy, whether it's national security, whether it's the border. Trump is putting the country back in the right direction.
Jim McLaughlin, the thing that I found interesting is that if you think about the headwinds that President Trump faces, every day when I flip around the morning shows, it's something wrong that is going down, something bad, somebody doing something about DOGE, something about cutting Medicare, hurting Americans, the tariffs impact. And yet when I see the wrong track going down and the right track going up, I think to myself, you know what? The American people are actually a lot smarter than I think the mainstream media gives them credit for.
Without a doubt. And I think one of the things that President Trump and the White House is doing brilliantly now is literally they're talking around and they're talking over the media. I mean, think about that trip that President Trump just had to the Middle East. That was unprecedented. I have never seen in my lifetime a better foreign trip for a president. Because literally, we always say the two things that presidents get elected on, and it drives their popularity, their approval ratings, are peace and prosperity. And that trip did both. Think about it. He came back from the Middle East with over $5 trillion, that's trillion dollars worth of new investment to America. And then the other thing was, what he did was, he not only was making alliances with the other Middle Eastern countries, specifically Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, but he was also protecting our greatest ally, obviously, in the Middle East, in Israel, and he was isolating our enemies, Iran. He was isolating China. He was isolating Russia. And the American people saw through all the nonsense that they're getting about President Trump. And that's why you're seeing those numbers move. And that's why it's going to be so important, by the way, we get that big, beautiful bill passed here, because it's going to do nothing but increase on that momentum.
Yeah, I'm going to get to that, because you guys have a lot of good information on that and some of these battleground districts that you put a poll out about. But John McLaughlin, the thing that I really like how you guys asked this question about job approval, because normally it's like, do you like this person or not? And it's like a high school student council race. Like, do you like Bobby or not? Right. But you guys asked in a very interesting way. It says, which of the following statements regarding President Trump and his policy comes closest to your opinion? 1, I approve of President Trump and his policies. 2, I disapprove of President Trump personally, but I like a lot of his policies. And 3, I disapprove of President Trump and his policies. And I think that this is something that I find a lot. And this is why I love the way you guys ask the question, John, because there's people who say to me, oh, I just don't like him, but I love his policies. And you guys made room for that. And I thought that was fascinating because most of the time you lose that intel that people actually, I think when I bump into them, the people who don't like Trump will say, yeah, but I do like the policies.
Well, you're a political strategist, and this is what we had to do during President Trump's first term when he was running for 2020, because the media was beating him up personally, and nothing he could do was right, and they were driving an unfavorable on him with their unfair coverage. And it stayed the same going into the 2024 race. So what we were doing is we developed this question so that we knew he was running on popular issues. We knew people favored shutting down the border. We know they wanted to deport criminal illegal aliens, 86-8. We know that even recent as February, they want to pass his tax cut, make it permanent, 64-20. So his policies are more popular. So we used his policies to raise his favorability. So that last November, we used this in the campaign. Last November, on election day, he was the most popular candidate on the ballot, not Kamala Harris, it was him. And you had a 56% approve of his job that he did as president, because we ran a contrast campaign with him and Biden, then him and Harris. And the policies and the success that he had, whether it was growing the economy, securing the border, keeping America at peace, keeping us strong, those things raised his favorability so that a lot of people never thought we could win the popular vote. We swept the battleground states. It even helped us during the primaries. We crushed the primaries. Like, no one ever won the primaries as strongly as he did. Not Ronald Reagan, not George W. Bush, H.W. Bush. I mean, Donald Trump just crushed it from Iowa straight through to all the Super Tuesday states. And, it was his policies that enabled people to say, you know what? He's really not a bad person. There's some charisma there. This was the guy who was able to, when they said we're all garbage, he put on a yellow vest and drove a garbage truck to the rallies. He's the guy when Kamala Harris was caught, not telling the truth about working at McDonald's, he was more than happy to go work at a McDonald's. But it brought out the policy success and also brought out the best part of his personality so people could like him. So that's why we ask it that way. And by the way, in this poll, he's been up to, it's a net of 2 points since the last month, where we got a 51 job approval and a 44 disapprove. So don't believe those skewed media polls, those fake media polls again.
Yeah, and that's the thing, I appreciate that because, Jim, you and I talk about this all the time. The fake media polls that your brother refers to, they don't accurately sample how the election came last time, right? I mean, you guys, your methodology is vastly different than the cheap media polls that come out, right?
Yeah, and look, we come out with usually a representative sample of the voters that voted for Donald Trump in November and the voters that voted for Kamala Harris back in November. And I remember two of the media polls that were, it was literally orchestrated right around the 100 days. Was you had these liberal media outlets coming out with polls that are saying, oh, Donald Trump only has a 40% job approval rating, blah, blah, blah. And then we're finding out they only have like 37% of the voters in their poll actually voted for Donald Trump. And only 34%, I think it was, in another one of the polls. So they are they're undersampling Donald Trump's voters by over double digits. Anytime you see a poll like that, it's just not accurate. It's just like over 90% of the stories by the mainstream media have been negative when it comes to Donald Trump. And just like John was saying, whether it's on immigration, whether it's on President Trump's tax cuts, whether it's on him trying to bring peace throughout the world, the American people overwhelmingly tell us they support his policies. And that's not just our polling. You look at somebody like Mark Penn, who was the Clintons pollster. He's saying the same thing, where Donald Trump's policies are overwhelmingly popular.
Before I get to Joe Biden's talking about not popular, John, I want to ask you, when you guys have been briefing Donald Trump well before he ever became president and got into politics. When you talk to him and show him a slide that says, here's your, I've had to brief him on press stuff before, but when you brief him, I mean, does he ever push back and go, John, those numbers are totally off. How does he receive data? Because I've done the briefing with him, but it's not like I don't have to deliver pretending to I'm trying to tell him how many people like him and don't.
Well, he always pushes back because you have to, you know him. You got to be on your toes. You got to because that's how he learns, and he basically he absorbs information and knowledge that way. And he'll push back, and then if you can stand your ground and you can prove the point, he'll listen to you and actually do what's right. So like what Jim was talking about, these fake media polls. I mean, we got 50% of the national popular vote, and you've got the New York Times says there's only 37% Trump voters in their poll. And then you get the Washington Post ABC, it's only 34% Trump voters. So it's easy to point out that, those are fake polls. But in the meantime, when Jim and I deliver polls to him, and we started advising him in 2011, when Dick Morris introduced us to him. He was thinking of running against Obama in 2012. And, we spent a month writing a plan, that he later on used for 2015 and 2016, but we did it on spec back then. The guy's a brilliant businessman. But, we'll sit there and he respects when you're honest with him, and you can tell him when things are wrong. But the best part is Jim and I will try to tell him, hey, this is how you fix this. This is what you need to do. I mean, in 2016, at some point early in the primaries, he was getting ready to, he was getting ready to get through the primary in New York after losing Wisconsin. That's when we got re-engaged with him. And he says, do you think I need a tax cut plan? I said, sure, you're running in a Republican primary. He says, where do you get one? I said, talk to Steve Forbes, Larry Kudlow, Art Laffer, Steve Moore. They'll write it for you. They wrote it for, they did it for Pataki, for Mayor Giuliani, for Christy Todd Whitman. And it was a great plan, and he loved it. And it was a signature achievement from his first term.
Yeah.
And if we want to win the midterms, we've got to get that tax cut passed. And he knows it.
I want to get to that because it's actually in your battleground congressional district poll. So, but you talk about the when you guys lay these things out at McLaughlin online and .com, you can not just see the current results, but the trend. And that's what I love about looking at this, because I went down and I look at Joe Biden and Jim, it's currently 56 unfavorable, 40 favorable. And the thing that was weird to me is normally when a politician leaves office, they get sort of the people kind of it's like an ex-girlfriend. I don't know that you ever had that, but you start to think you forget all the bad and you're like, it wasn't that bad and it was good. And with Biden, it's like, no, he's actually pretty much where he was when he left, and no one's nostalgic for the Biden days. And I assume, I don't know, when did you guys do this and I just so you know, on this program, we don't say the name of the fake book about the cover up because we're not looking to give that particular fake news person any additional coverage or sales. But there's a book, in case you haven't heard, about Biden out right now. Did you guys poll before or after? Because I wonder if that was effective when it came to these numbers.
No, we actually got out of the field. When did we get out of the field, John? On Sunday.
So I think
we got the data back on Monday. So that was all going on. But
Okay.
You know what it is? It's still fresh in their minds. And Sean, to your point, I mean, think about it. I think the classic example of it is we all remember how unpopular Jimmy Carter was when he left office. His negatives were like low 60s and whatnot. Meanwhile, on his death and Habitat for Humanity, everybody kind of forgave him. The American people aren't forgiving Joe Biden. And by the way, it's not because of personal stuff. It's because they know what a disaster he was as president. When we used to do the focus groups during the campaigns, and I tell people when I was moderating the focus groups that, the inflation rate was at 25%, 30%, or whatever. It was 9% that second summer he was in office. the voters would sit there and they'd get visibly angry and tell you inflation was way higher than that. When you told them grocery prices were up 30%, they'd say, no, they're up about 50%. And they're still feeling the effects of Joe Biden's failures. And that's not to mention things like Afghanistan. And obviously we had the Ukraine-Russia war. So that's why his negatives are driven, and they're so bad because they are issue related, and they're still there because the American people are feeling the effects. And I actually look at it, and you brought it up at the beginning of the segment, is the whole idea about how much better the American people are feeling about the direction of the country under Donald Trump.
Yeah. John, the thing that's interesting is that it's not just Joe Biden. I look at the same thing. Kamala Harris is unfavorable. She's at 50% unfavorable, 45 favorable. And that's kind of, I mean, I'm trying to do the math here, but it looks, according to the chart here, that it's almost dead on of where she was when she left office. I don't see, frankly, any movement for the most part on her unfave or her fave since she left office. No one's changed an opinion on her, which I guess, considering that she's been out of the spotlight, except for a couple of cackles here and there and a word salad that we got thrown in, that there's really not been a lot of sightings of her. Maybe that's it, why things haven't changed. But I kind of was intrigued that she's still there too.
Right. And by the way, the politics right now are so polarized. And one of the things that we've gotten in the survey is about 35% of the voters get their information from Fox and Newsmax and right-of-center sources. And
how many? Wait, say that again. How many?
35% of likely voters.
35% of all voters get their news from Fox or Newsmax.
Right. And another 30% or less watch, MSNBC and CNN. And the other 35%, they're up for grabs. They don't watch any of that stuff. And you have to break through. So Harris, her and Biden, they still have this Democratic base that is deranged and gets deranged news, and anything Trump does is wrong. And you had to do combat with these people every day when you were the press secretary. And then you get our side, it's fair and balanced. We try to go out of the way to be fair and balanced. And then there's people who are going to watch, the hockey playoffs, the NBA playoffs. They're going to be women who watch Hallmark Channel. They don't care about
Jim McLaughlin.
Political stuff. Yeah, right. That's his focus group. But and by the way, Jim, when you were talking about Sean remembering Jimmy Carter, I mean, that's us.
Yeah.
Kid, he wasn't even on the gas lines. I mean, it's like
no. Listen, I might have some blonde hair still, but I remember when I was growing up, you either got a red flag day or a green flag day.
Yeah.
In Rhode Island, when I grew up in Rhode Island, if you had, depending on your license plate, it would have been an odd or an even number that allowed you to get gas.
Yes.
I remember sitting in that line in my father's station wagon, waiting in the line to get gas back in the day.
Yeah, well,
John got to stay at home, right, in the air conditioning, and you got stuck in the car.
No, he was hungover, Sean.
I was a driver. I had to commute to college in the Bronx. It was horrible.
So it's interesting. I did this. I've got this video that's going to come out over the weekend about Democratic leadership, right? And the point that I'm making, people, if you're not signed up to our YouTube videos, please go and do that now, because I looked at their leadership the other day, and when basically I did it kind of from the top down, right? I looked at who their presidential leadership and potential candidates are, then who their House and Senate leadership were, and then sort of the shadow potential people in the future. And so when I was looking through your latest polls, Jim, I saw the Hakeem Jeffries thing, and it literally blew my mind, because I was like, it validated everything that I'm going to say this weekend in this video that I'm putting out. His favorable is 26, his unfavorable is 30. I mean, that's not like, they don't, it's like it gets worse. It's almost like it's worse for as you go down the road from Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. It's not good.
Yeah. And look, it's a lot of people don't know who he is, right? But a lot of the people that do know him, they don't like him.
23.
And what you're really seeing with Hakeem Jeffries is desperation, because, I think he's really made a big mistake on the whole, in terms of negotiating with the Republicans and the big, beautiful bill, because he should have found some stuff in there that he says, okay, I can negotiate with the Republicans on, whether it was
Yeah.
the green energy tax credits, maybe some stuff on healthcare and whatnot. Instead, what he's done is he's left his vulnerable members, including 13 Democrats that are in battleground seats that Donald Trump won. And now what's going to happen, because they've been so insane and so radical against the big, beautiful bill and President Trump, we're going to be able to go out there and tell the Americans, these Democrats, they supported the largest tax increase in American history. These Democrats, their policy supported open borders. By the way, one of the things that nobody's talking about in the big, beautiful bill, there are tax credits in there that make getting private health insurance more important. Nobody's talking about that kind of stuff. Not to mention what they're calling cuts in Medicaid, which aren't really cuts. It's about the Democrats want to give Medicaid to illegal immigrants. Yeah. So I think that's why you're seeing the negatives he's got. And the guy that's got even higher negatives is Chuck Schumer. His negatives are at 40. I mean, if you know,
Chuck 45. Schumer, you guys
like
haven't. I was actually going to say, you John, you brought up Jimmy Carter. Chuck Schumer, I looked this up for this video I'm doing. He was first elected to Congress in 1981. Now, to put that into perspective, we talked about the gas lines. Do you realize that when Chuck Schumer was elected to Congress in 1981, it would be another 4 years before J.D. Vance was born? I mean, that puts that. But here he is, 45% unfavorable, 26. So, John, this is a little different than how Jim described Hakeem Jeffries. More people know him. Only 11% don't know him. And of the people they do, they're like 45% say, I don't like that guy. And only 26% they do. That's, if you're the Democrats in Congress, both of your leaders suck.
Right. And by the way, to know Chuck Schumer is to dislike him. So it's like he kind of, not only is he wrong on policy, but he just, when he comes out and attacks us, and, he took Aldamoto's seat. He won an election in 98 and it was a hard fought race, but it was a real loss for New York. And Schumer has been downhill ever since. And he's the leader in the Senate. And that's a big reason why they've lost their majority. So I hope he stays as a leader. I hope he continues to push their agenda. But Jim had a good point. These Democrats, Jackie Rosen bucked their caucus last week, where she put out an individual bill saying that there should be no tax on tips. And it passed the Senate unanimously, because the members know that this blind, basically opposition, deranged opposition to President Trump is not popular. So, because the no tax on tips is popular. 71% of Americans support that last time we tested it.
Yeah.
And no tax on overtime is 67% support. So, so Chuck Schumer is he won't give the Republicans an inch. And like Jim said, every Democrat has voted against the Republican budget framework in the House and in the Senate. So they voted for the largest tax increase in history. And what really the mistake strategically right now is us Republicans as a party, we have not torpedoed them with that, because we're the party of growth, economic optimism, reform. We're the party of change, and they're the party of the status quo and a failed government that hasn't worked, that's been led by Biden, Pelosi, Schumer, now Hakeem Jeffries. I mean, good luck, guys. So,
because I want to, if you guys will allow me, there's two more things on this national survey, and then I want to get to this battleground surveys, because this is where you guys really did the state. But if Chuck Schumer were going to lose his seat, as John alluded to, I think the primary, no pun intended, candidate that would do that would be Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Jim, you guys polled her. 41% unfavorable, 31 favorable. Here's the kicker, though. Only 13% have never heard of her. Now, let's just remind people, 41 unfavorable, 31 favorable, 13 never heard. Obviously, a little bit of no opinion in there. But she has higher name ID than the Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries, who's at 30, 26, 21. That's telling. Like, they're really sort of, but same kind of thing that Jim alluded to with Schumer. It's like they know her, they just don't like her.
And think about it. She is basically the thought leader now in the Democratic Party. She was the one going out there with Bernie Sanders doing these, rallies across the country
on a private plane.
and she's an admitted socialist. So the socialist is running around. She doesn't hide the fact that she's a socialist, and she would clean Chuck Schumer's clock in a primary in New York. The only thing that might save her is some sort of a deal and her running for president. But think about it. Here you have somebody, and I tell everybody this. The worst thing that ever happened to the Democratic Party, and maybe the worst thing that happened to the country, was when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez beat Joe Crowley in that Democratic primary in New York City. As most people know, Joe Crowley was kind of a moderate Clinton-type Democrat back in the day. Once Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez beat him, that's when the Democratic Party went off the rails. That's when they went for defunding the police, cashless bail, all the soft on crime policies, national government-run healthcare, open borders. That's when guys like Andrew Cuomo started supporting those policies because they were all afraid of getting primaried by the next AOC or even AOC. So it just goes to show you that's what's leading the insanity in the Democratic Party. And look, it's not out of the realm in a place like New York City this cycle where the Democratic candidate is going to be the Assemblyman Mamandi, he's a Marxist. He's a jihadist. And that's who the Democrats may elect. He may upset Andrew Cuomo. It's scary.
Before we get into, I want one last thing on this, and then I want to get to this memo. But by the way, you name-checked former Congressman Joe Crowley. His son Cullen passed away this week. United States Naval Academy grad, a Marine, hard-fought, battle with cancer. Our thoughts and prayers are with the Crowley family this week. But John, Jim said socialism and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and this is the last thing I want to touch on, because in your poll, this was when I read through the whole thing, I stopped at the slide and I kind of said a prayer. I was like, oh my God. You guys asked whether or not people, all things being equal, do you support free market capitalism or big government socialism? 66% capitalism, 11% socialism. I've been getting really worried that the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes, the Bernie Sanderses of the world, are leading, especially young people, to believe that socialism is an acceptable form of government. And this poll took my temperature and my blood pressure way down. Is there anything in the crosstabs that you're concerned about when you look at that, hey, yeah, young people are the ones driving it, or is it just straight across the left?
Well, I'll tell you, when we take the word big government away from the front part of socialism, you'll get a different result where all of a sudden you might get 20, 30%, and it'll go higher among the Democrats and younger voters. But we framed that question. We did it a couple of years ago. We framed it with Newt Gingrich. We were working with, and Larry Kudlow he's the positive side of the free market capitalism. That's what he does with his show. And so they're very good friends. And we had been researching to win this war. And what it was the Democrats really don't define socialism. They try to say it's more fair, but it gives them control. And you saw that when Biden was president. You see that with AOC. You see that with Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. They really want control. And what Americans don't like is we don't like things that are big, whether it's a big corporation, whether it's big banks, big this, big that. We don't like big government. So when you put big government in front of socialism, you've defined what's at stake, and that's why you get that big number. And we like freedom. We like free market capitalism. So if you just ask capitalism and socialism, you're playing into AOC's game. When you say, hey, look, this is about freedom and free markets versus big government control and socialism, then we blow them away. Then Americans get in and focus. And it's not just, it's not just the older voters or more conservative voters, immigrants, younger voters, people who want government out of their lives, want a chance to succeed, especially those of us who were traumatized during COVID. These young voters, the Gen Z voters who, had school taken away from them, couldn't get jobs, et cetera. They want freedom. They want free market capitalism. They want to have their chance. They don't want the government telling them, that they have to live with these high interest rates and accept lower pay and not the kind of jobs they want. So that's an argument we're going to win. And I'm glad you grasped that, because
I was worried.
Yeah.
So, Jim, you guys did this battleground district poll for the Club for Growth. You looked at across key battleground districts. So this is really where the fight for the House of Representatives is. It's not going to be, unfortunately, in Rhode Island. It's not going to be, in places like Montana, solid red, solid blue. But there's going to be in these key districts, in these 35 Republican congressional districts, whether or not we keep it or not. And I thought something jumped out at me in the summary of the poll that you did. It says the path to winning includes stopping any tax increase, creating savings by cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, eliminating taxpayer benefits for illegal immigrants, and preserving and protecting safety net benefits like Medicaid for American citizens who need it. Couldn't agree more. I think the problem that I get worried about is, is that how the debate's going to get framed? Do people believe that this big, beautiful bill is going to cut their taxes, make them better off, and that Republicans aren't going to be harming benefits in social safety nets, as you guys write, in Medicaid? Yep. That's the concern, is that, yes, it's sort of like done right. If you do all of the directions, the House looks like this. But if you don't follow the directions, it's going to tip over. And
Sean, you know this. And by the way, you were greatly missed this time on the Trump campaign. We used to have more fun with you.
I like being here.
I don't blame you.
Temperature's much lower.
But you know what the important thing is? We need to do the same thing that you used to do, that Sean Spicer used to do when he was in a campaign. We need to go on offense.
Go out and drink a lot.
It is so important we get on offense. Yeah. We got to let them know what we stand for and what the Democrats stand for. And the Democrats have gone past like being liberals anymore, progressives, whatever they're calling themselves these days. They are insane and they are extreme. That's where they are. Because think about it. They want to give the American people the largest tax increase in history. They think it's a good idea to give illegals. When we're having trouble trying to give people that truly deserve, whether it's Medicaid benefits, Social Security benefits, Medicare benefits, they want to give these benefits to illegals. I mean, it's outrageous when you think about it and how extreme that the Democrats have become. We've got to get on offense because, look, I'm going back to Mark Penn. He's saying the voters agree with Donald Trump. They agree with where the Republicans are on these issues. We've got to do clear contrast. And one of the things that concerns me right now is the Democrats, like I said, Hakeem Jeffries is doing anything to hang on to power. And in these battleground congressional districts, and we work for our share of battleground Republicans in those districts, the Democrats and these left-wing groups have already spent against each one probably over $1 million, falsely accusing them of cutting Medicaid, cutting Social Security. And look, it goes back to show you they have no message. And what I tell people the big problem is with the Democrats these days, they have a performance and a policy problem. They can't point to any policies or any performance and say, hey, you know what? So-and-so's doing a really good job here, or this policy is really good. The only thing they can do is try to assassinate and attack Republicans.
John, you guys write in the memo, voters want Medicaid savings by cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, right? By a 2-to-1 margin, 68 to 29, 2/3 believe that waste, abuse, and fraud in the Medicaid system is a problem. 4 in 5, 79 to 16, support requiring able-bodied adults to work, be looking for a job or attending school in order to receive taxpayer funded. So, and I agree. I imagine that that makes sense, to be honest with you. It's common sense. But that's not how the Democrats are framing this, right? Yeah. I woke up in Virginia, where I live. That's why I woke up here. And and the ads are for lieutenant governor. There's a Democratic primary and for the attorney general. And they're running ads saying, we're going to stop all the cuts that Elon Musk and President Trump are trying to put in, which, by the way, as a side note, the lieutenant governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia is not going to stop anything. I mean, like, it's silly, but this is their ad. Every single ad is the same. They know what they're going to do. They're going to attack us on cutting Medicaid. They're going to attack these DOGE cuts. If you're advising these people who are in these districts that you guys went over through the poll, what is the message to them? How do they get out on offense?
By the way, it's easy. And that poll was 1,000 likely voters in 35 districts that are Republicans being targeted by the Democrats, by the NRC, by the DCCC. But in Virginia, your point is exactly right, because in that same poll, like Jim said, when you to protect Medicare benefits, 68 to 23, they favor a law that stops using the money to give Medicaid to illegal immigrants. So the counter ad is easy for the Republicans to make, is say, because the Democrats say we're doing cut. Yep, we're cutting illegal immigrants from Medicaid. That was the Biden-Harris voter registration program. Let you in the country illegally, give you free health care, give you welfare, give you a cell phone, give you a hotel. And we've got to cut that. We've got to say, yeah, we are going to cut illegal immigrants off of Medicaid because it's not fair. It's like immoral. We should have this fight. We want to have this fight.
Yes.
It's immoral that people in America who can't afford food, can't afford the utility bills, can't afford a mortgage to buy a house, can't afford a car repair or a health care bill, they've got to pay taxes to give free health care to illegal immigrants who came here illegally, or to an adult who's capable of working but refuses to do so because Obama and Biden and Harris waived workfare requirements. Yeah. So, this is an easy fight to have, but we've got to have the fight. The Republicans, in Virginia, I can't speak to those campaigns because I'm not involved, but the Republicans need to put up response ads right away and say, they don't want to cut illegal immigrants from healthcare. They don't want to cut able-bodied adults who refuse to work. So we've got to take that fight because it's wrong and it's something that it has to stop. We can't afford this.
I agree. Well, speaking of not affording it, Jim, look, you guys polled this. I saw it. We have a morning meeting show. We do a poll, the People's Poll that Mark Halperin and his team put out, and people want the budget balance. People want wasteful spending, and I never can figure it out. These members of Congress won't then fight for it, and I'm like, dude, this is what the American people want. Yeah. Why aren't you leading it the same way that you guys brag about getting funding for a bridge? I would be out there bragging, I'm saving the future by reducing wasteful spending.
I couldn't agree with you more. And you know how the voters are on our side? Because think about who just came out he came out against giving taxpayer-funded benefits on Medicaid to illegals was Gavin Newsom. Now, he gave us the rhetoric, but he's not giving us the policy on that. So he knows it's a political problem for the Democrats. And you're exactly right. The American people intuitively get it. And they will tell you that when we cut spending, lower taxes, increase, and we decrease excessive regulations, it creates jobs, creates more taxpayers. They know it's good for the economy. And you brought up another one, which I don't think there's any question about it, is the whole idea about a balanced budget. And the American people, that's what they want. They understand it's good for the economy.
Yeah, I mean, John, I agreed. To me, I'd like to hear more from our side. I like where Ron Johnson is and these guys. Like, let's get the debt under control. Let's balance the budget, even if it's a path. And I think one of the things that I keep telling people about Doge is that the president looks like I'm trying, and I'm too tired. I'm tired, and I think I speak for a lot of people when I say of politicians who just say, it's not going to do it. Trump on tariffs, on Doge, on all of these things is like, I'm on Harvard, on higher ed, I'm willing to fight. I'm willing to do the right thing. And I think people just want someone to fight for them.
Right. And you're exactly right. And this survey, the idea of putting America first, I mean, you had 2/3 of the voters, 66 to 28%, said they want President Trump to continue to put America first. Now, he doesn't, but that's a big number. But the mainstream media doesn't give us, or the legacy media doesn't give us that kind of a view. So what they're instead, they're trying to save these Democrats and the partisans, and you got the stuff. I mean, the stuff with Joe Biden that you're talking about, where he was obviously too demented to run for re-election, and the media covered it up, and now they're all like, "Oh my gosh!"
All right.
And by the way, can I get back to that point too about America First, just really quick? On that question where we said, even though I may not agree with everything Donald Trump says or does or says, I like the fact that he's putting America first. You know who is even higher than that, than any other ethnic group? Hispanic voters. It's nearly 7 out of 10 of Hispanic voters. Why? Because they came here for the American dream.
That's right. All right, I've been waiting. I got one last question to ask both of you. I need you to weigh in on it because I've been stumped by this, and I thought I need the two top pollsters in the country to answer this question. Pete Buttigieg was on a podcast earlier this week, and he weighed in on some concerns and some issues. And I want to play this for you and just get you to tell me whether I'm missing an issue that is just going overlooked. Let's play what Pete had to say about the issues that he's worried about.
Of course, we should be talking about how, if Speaker Johnson got his way, it wouldn't be possible, not just for gay people to get married, but for straight people to get divorced, let alone like birth control or how he would want to regulate porn or whatever. Most people would have a problem.
So is regulating porn an issue that's just not on my radar? Because I've never heard anyone in politics ever talk about that being an issue that voters care about. And I thought, I got to get the McLaughlin. I mean, I'm sure that the whole McLaughlin Catholic family is probably turning over in their grave when I ask this. But I was just, where did that come from?
I'll give you an answer. He's running for president, and he doesn't want to talk about the failed air traffic control system, and he doesn't want to talk about any other how he took off during COVID and didn't get the supply chains done or any other transportation problems. But he's now in that national poll behind Harris. He's come in second place at 10%, and you've got AOC at 9%, and Newsom falling out of it as he moves right. So he's trying to move up in the deranged primary, creating some sort of, fake issues that he wants to run on, rather than, it's like they try to scare people about the Republican Party.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it, Sean. This just goes to show you how out of touch they are. They think, and look, Donald Trump, he won this election among young men. He won among Hispanic men. He got historic numbers among black men. And Pete Buttigieg thinks the way they're going to get him back is by saying the Republicans are going to ban porn. I mean, they're nuts.
I get it. I'm just sorry. I was like, I had to listen to that clip twice. I'm like, did he just say regulate porn? I think John's right. He's like, I'll talk about porn rather than my failed record as Secretary of Transportation. Both John and Jim, I love having you both together. Thank you guys for sharing your insights. I love both the battleground poll and the national poll. Thanks for everything you broke down for us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Sean.
Thanks, guys.
Keep getting the truth out.
I will. I promise. You too. All right, guys, thanks for watching us. Have a great weekend. Go to SeanSpicer.com. I released my latest column today. It's free. Just sign up and share it with some friends. SeanSpicer.com. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday. And make sure you hit that notification button. We got videos coming out both days this weekend. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.